In the quiet tree-lined streets of Willow Creek, life unfolded with predictable grace. Manicured lawns, evening strolls, and the gentle rhythm of neighborly waves painted a picture of idyllic American suburbia, a place where dreams were carefully cultivated and futures meticulously planned. Eleanor Vance, with her infectious optimism and a career blossoming into undeniable success, embodied this very promise. Her home, a sanctuary of ordered beauty, reflected a life forged with purpose and passion. Yet, even in such a seemingly impenetrable haven, shadows can lengthen unseen, and the most cherished routines can become the very framework for an unimaginable disruption. What happens when the ordinary suddenly ceases to be, when the comfortable hum of daily existence is replaced by an unnerving silence, when the future once so bright becomes a gaping void marked only by the chilling absence of a single vibrant soul and a series of desperate unanswered calls? How does one begin to trace the fracture where normalcy ended and terror began? Willow Creek, a community cradled by sprawling woodlands, projected an image of perfect suburban tranquility. Autumn sunlight, now mellow and deep, filtered through the rust-colored leaves of maple and oak, painting gentle shadows across manicured lawns. Each home stood as a quiet declaration of its residents' aspirations of lives carefully tended. It was in this seemingly unassailable calm that Eleanor Vance, a dynamic 42-year-old real estate agent, thrived. Her presence, a potent blend of ambition and warmth, illuminated her surroundings. She had forged a formidable career, her exacting schedule a testament to her sharp intellect and relentless drive, yet always carving out cherished moments for her beloved golden retriever Buster and the close circle of friends and family who held her dear. A demanding property deal had just closed its success, resonating deeply with Eleanor's professional acumen. She looked forward to a rare evening of unburdened relaxation within her elegant, recently renovated home. Her sister Sarah Vance vividly recalled Eleanor's infectious spirit, confirming a sentiment shared by many. She was larger than life, Sarah would later reflect, her voice tinged with lingering affection, always planning, always moving forward. She had this way of making everyone feel like they were the most important person in the room. Eleanor's final observable actions were prosaic, a tableau of the everyday. Security camera footage from the local grocery store captured her basket in hand, engaging in a brief, pleasant exchange with the cashier. Mrs. Henderson, her neighbor across the street, offered a casual wave as Eleanor pulled into her driveway, Buster's eager barks providing a familiar soundtrack to the street's prevailing peace. Eleanor's residence, a modern craftsman with a verdant sculpted garden, represented more than just an address. It was a tangible expression of her triumphs, her discerning taste, and the vibrant future she envisioned. Every gleaming surface, every thoughtfully placed piece of art, spoke of a life lived purposefully, passionately, and with profound attention to detail. The air within, often fragrant with fresh blooms and the subtle notes of coffee, had always served as a private sanctuary, a space where Eleanor could unwind and rejuvenate. But on this particular Tuesday evening, as dusk began its measured descent over Willow Creek, painting the western sky in deep oranges and violets, this serene tableau poised precariously. The silent walls of Eleanor Vance's suburban haven, soon to become the epicenter of an intense investigation, were about to yield secrets that would irrevocably alter the carefully constructed world she inhabited. A peaceful night awaited no one. Instead, a shattering darkness loomed. An insidious quiet began to settle over David Miller's Tuesday evening. A single text, light-hearted and familiar, drifted into the digital ether without a reply. Minutes later, his usual evening call echoed into voicemail, an anomaly in their otherwise predictable rhythm. David tried again, and then a third time, each unanswered ring amplifying a creeping dread that resonated far beyond mere missed connection. The easy confidence of their relationship, built on open communication, began to fray at the edges. David, a man usually unperturbed, now paced his apartment, a cold, hard knot coiling in his gut. He meticulously replayed their last conversation, a mundane exchange about his upcoming golf game, desperately searching for any forgotten detail, any subtle intonation that might explain this profound, unnerving silence. Hours bled into a sleepless night, the digital glow of his phone mocking him with its stubborn vacancy. As dawn reluctantly broke, painting the suburban homes of Willow Creek in a deceptive, almost innocent light, David could no longer ignore the gnawing certainty that something was fundamentally terribly wrong. His drive to Eleanor's house was imbued with a desperate urgency, the familiar street passing in a blur. The meticulously kept neighborhood usually awakening with the gentle hum of morning activity seemed to hold its breath. When he pulled into her driveway, a chilling scene unfolded. Eleanor's front door, typically secured with multiple locks, stood ajar, a tiny, almost imperceptible gap that screamed of an unwelcome entry. Buster, Eleanor's ever-present golden retriever, was notably absent. The dog's disappearance, an immediate red flag, sent a fresh jolt of fear through David. Stepping across the threshold, David was met, not with the familiar warmth of Eleanor's home, but with a palpable, chilling stillness that pressed in on him, making his skin prickle. The air hung heavy, charged with an unspoken terror. In the kitchen, a stark, clinical light illuminated a half-eaten meal on the counter, a silent testament that Eleanor had been home and that her evening had been violently, abruptly interrupted. His gaze darted around the impeccable living room, then the quiet dining area, searching, hoping, dreading what he might find. But there was nothing, only the overwhelming quiet and the terrifying void of Eleanor's absence. His frantic call to 911, choked with a raw mixture of terror and disbelief, tore through the morning words, tumbling out as he articulated the unthinkable. It was a call that would tear the illusion of safety from Willow Creek, igniting an investigation destined to unravel far more than just a disappearance, forever altering the lives of those caught in its wake. David Miller's urgent, fragmented 911 call tore through the pre-dawn quiet, mobilizing the precise machinery of law enforcement. Within minutes, the serene facade of Eleanor Vance's Willow Creek home was illuminated by the pulsing blue and red of patrol car lights. Detective Sergeant Laura Hedges, a seasoned investigator whose sharp gaze had catalogued countless scenes of inexplicable tragedy, arrived with her partner Detective Mark Jensen. The initial view of the house, even before official entry, presented a baffling paradox. The subtle gap in the front door, barely an inch, seemed almost an invitation rather than a forceful breach, while the untouched valuables visible through the windows spoke against a simple robbery. A careful choreography commenced as the crime scene unit meticulously established its perimeter yellow tape, unfurling like a stark declaration against the vibrant autumn foliage. Each officer, each technician moved with deliberate precision, their actions a systematic quest for truth. The process began with exhaustive photographic documentation, followed by a measured entry, every corner swept for immediate threats or overlooked clues. Inside Eleanor's living room, immaculate and undisturbed, save for an unsettling absence of warmth, spoke volumes of her fastidious nature. Yet an undeniable aura of violation hung heavy in the air. Eleanor Vance herself was gone. Her purse, her wallet, and her mobile phone, her vital connections to the world, were missing, a calculated move by a perpetrator intent on isolating her. Even more disturbing was the disappearance of Buster, her loyal golden retriever, an absence that defied any logical explanation if Eleanor had simply chosen to leave. Preliminary search of the residence yielded no body, no overt signs of a physical struggle beyond the half-eaten meal abandoned on the kitchen counter, a silent tableau of a normal evening violently interrupted. The kitchen light left glaring, cast a harsh, unforgiving glow on the remnants of a life suddenly, irrevocably stalled. Detective Hedges, her analytical mind already sifting through the layers of the scene, honed in on subtle inconsistencies. Near the back patio door, partially obscured by a decorative mat, a faint mud-flecked boot print stood out clearly, not Eleanor's size or style. A barely perceptible scent, an unfamiliar men's cologne, clung faintly to the chilled air, a spectral signature of an unwelcome presence. Hedges, her face a mask of professional resolve, exchanged a brief, knowing glance with Jensen. This was no random act of violence, no opportunistic burglary gone awry. This quiet suburban house held the chilling evidence of a deeply personal crime, its carefully constructed peace shattered by a calculated and deliberate act. As the initial wave of emergency responders departed, a different kind of expertise filled Eleanor Vance's home. The forensic team, methodical and unyielding, initiated its exhaustive examination, scrutinizing every surface, every minute detail of the tranquil suburban dwelling. The omniscient narrator guides the audience through this painstaking quest. The careful lifting of latent fingerprints, the delicate collection of microscopic fibers, the precise swabbing for unseen DNA. Their early findings began to paint a disturbing picture of a crime executed with forethought. No signs of forced entry suggested Eleanor either knew her assailant or had been caught entirely by surprise. The faint mud-flecked boot print near the patio door, later identified as a distinctive, uncommon brand of hiking footwear, offered a tantalizing yet isolated lead, a single thread teasing a much larger, darker narrative. While the house itself showed little overt violence, the chilling absence of Eleanor's phone and wallet indicated a perpetrator intent not merely on her abduction, but on severing her immediate ties to the world, leaving her utterly isolated. With the physical evidence offering only fragments, Detective Jensen initiated a deeper inquiry into Eleanor's recent life, determined to expose any hidden fissures beneath the perfectly crafted surface she presented. Neighbors in Willow Creek, initially hesitant, slowly began to share hushed conversations and tense encounters. Mrs. Rodriguez from next door recalled observing heated arguments erupting in front of Eleanor's house, always involving an unidentified man, whose voice would rise sharply even as Eleanor attempted to maintain a calm facade. Colleagues at her real estate agency spoke of a particularly contentious business deal that had recently resurfaced, drawing an old acquaintance back into Eleanor's orbit. This interaction had created palpable friction, leaving Eleanor noticeably stressed and preoccupied. The seemingly placid currents of her professional and personal life, it now seemed concealed turbulent depths. It was Eleanor's sister, Sarah Vance, still navigating the raw shock of her disappearance, who reluctantly provided the most crucial insight. During a quiet, emotionally charged interview, Sarah's voice trembled as she confessed Eleanor had recently confided in her about rekindling a tumultuous, deeply complicated relationship with her former business partner and ex-fiancé Arthur Art Jenkins. This renewed connection, Sarah explained, had rapidly soured, leaving Eleanor anxious and distressed. Sarah further detailed Eleanor's escalating discomfort with Art's increasingly possessive demeanor and his dire financial straits. These pressures had culminated in a bitter dispute over an outstanding business debt and a valuable piece of inherited land. Eleanor steadfastly refused to sell a conflict Art desperately needed resolved. The narrative, initially a desperate search for a vanished woman, now pivoted, chillingly tracing a path backward into the intricate and treacherous web of Eleanor's past relationships, illuminating a powerful motive hidden just beneath the surface of Willow Creek's suburban calm. As Eleanor's fragmented final moments began to coalesce, detectives Hedges and Jensen diligently pieced together a detailed timeline of her last days. Every security camera feed, every phone record, every casual sighting was meticulously logged, forming a precise mosaic of her predictable routine. Their first order of business involved formalizing David Miller's account. Despite his palpable grief, a raw wound etched in his steady demeanor, David provided a robust alibi corroborated by multiple witnesses and digital records, unequivocally removing him from the immediate investigative net. His profound anguish, however, remained a stark reminder of the human cost of Eleanor's disappearance. The investigative focus then sharpened, inevitably turning to Arthur Art Jenkins. Art, a man whose charm was legendary in Willow Creek social circles, yet whose temper was a whispered warning, initially presented himself with practiced composure. He arrived at the station, radiating a feigned shock and sorrow, expressing a concern for Eleanor that felt rehearsed, almost performative. He claimed to have last seen Eleanor days before she vanished, insisting their complex relationship had remained entirely amicable. It was a convenient, almost too perfect narrative that immediately triggered the detectives' seasoned instincts. They observed the subtle tightening around his eyes, the almost imperceptible stiffening of his posture that betrayed the carefully constructed fade. It was Eleanor's sister, Sarah Vance, still reeling from the nightmare, who began to peel back the layers of Art's deception. Her voice trembled, but a steely resolve hardened her gaze as she spoke of Eleanor's growing unease. She was just exhausted by him. Sarah recounted, her voice thick with raw emotion, exhausted by his relentless demands, by his empty promises. Sarah elaborated on how Art's possessive nature had intensified, escalating alongside his dire financial struggles, casting a long, ominous shadow over Eleanor's life. Days before her disappearance, Eleanor had confided in Sarah about a particularly heated argument with Art. He was desperate for her to sign over a valuable piece of inherited land, a key asset Eleanor steadfastly refused to relinquish, seeing it as her final, unbreakable link to their grandmother. This land, Sarah revealed, was Art's desperate solution to his failing ventures, a conflict that had become a bitter, suffocating pressure point. David Miller's 3 calls, no answer now, took on a profoundly darker, more sinister resonance. No longer merely a marker of mounting concern, it transformed into a chilling timestamp, a precise window into the exact moment Eleanor Vance had become utterly vulnerable. It delineated a period of absolute isolation, a critical span when the predictable pulse of Willow Creek's suburban life had ceased for one vibrant woman, leaving her exposed to the malevolence her desperate and volatile ex-fiancé might have been capable of exploiting. The delicate threads of Eleanor's life were irrevocably unraveling, and with each new revelation, the knot of suspicion tightened inexorably around Arthur Jenkins. With David Miller's alibi firmly established and the intricate web of Eleanor's past relationships exposed, Detective Sergeant Laura Hedges and her team recognized the critical juncture of their investigation. The focus, sharp and undeniable, settled squarely on Arthur Art Jenkins. When a suspect's narrative begins to fray, Hedges would later articulate her gaze, unwavering, and a compelling, desperate motive emerges. You initiate surveillance. You watch, you listen, you wait. The directive was clear: full surveillance on Art Jenkins, a meticulous covert operation designed to observe his every move without revealing law enforcement's hand. The omniscient narrator illustrates the sophisticated mechanics of this hidden pursuit. Miniature GPS trackers, no larger than a coin, were discreetly affixed to Art's vehicle, painting a real-time digital map of his movements. Plainclothes officers, blending seamlessly into the tapestry of Willow Creek and its surrounding towns, rotated shifts, their eyes fixed on Art's residence, his usual haunts, and the increasingly obscure routes he began to take. Each surveillance team, a silent phantom in the suburban landscape, utilized specialized equipment from long-range parabolic microphones designed to capture distant whispers to discrete camera lenses that recorded his most private moments, all aimed at capturing the unvarnished realities of Art's life. Beyond his public facade, under this unseen scrutiny, Art's behavior, while not yet overtly incriminating, became undeniably erratic. He embarked on peculiar late-night excursions, his car slicing through the darkened streets, often returning hours later from remote, unpopulated stretches of road. He conspicuously avoided his customary haunts in Willow Creek, opting instead for lesser-known establishments in neighboring communities. A new nervous habit emerged: a persistent, almost obsessive checking of his rearview mirror, his eyes constantly darting from side to side, betraying a profound unease, the unmistakable paranoia of a man sensing he was hunted even if he couldn't identify his pursuers. He seemed to feel the tightening coils, though he saw no cage. Simultaneously, a critical piece of the puzzle clicked into place from the diligent efforts of digital forensics. Eleanor's missing phone, initially a ghost in the vast cellular network, had briefly pinged a remote tower located deep within a wooded area mere hours after her disappearance. This single data point, initially an isolated anomaly, now held immense weight. The tower served a secluded cabin, a property known to be owned and frequently used by Arthur Jenkins. This undeniable detail unequivocally placed Art in a specific isolated location, with Eleanor's device directly contradicting his earlier claims of not having seen her for days. A deeper forensic examination of Art's financial records solidified the emerging theory of motive. The investigation unearthed a staggering mountain of debt, a labyrinth of unpaid loans and failing investments that painted a grim picture of a man teetering on the precipice of financial ruin. His desperate need for capital was stark, and the inherited land Eleanor steadfastly refused to sell suddenly became not merely a point of contention, but the very lifeline Art was desperately scrambling to seize. The placid suburban quiet of Willow Creek was now irrevocably shadowed by the grim reality of a calculated pursuit, its peaceful veneer peeled back to expose the darker machinations of a man driven to the edge. The hunt, silent but unyielding, had truly begun. The invisible threads of the investigation continued to cinch around Arthur Jenkins. Detectives Hedges and Jensen determined it was time to bring him in, not for a full-scale interrogation, but for a calculated, informal interview, an opportunity to dissect his every micro-expression, to observe the subtle tells that might betray him under the growing weight of inconsistencies. Art's initial demeanor was a study in practiced composure, calm, almost dismissive. He feigned genuine ignorance about Eleanor's whereabouts. He confidently asserted an alibi painting, a picture of a solitary late-night fishing trip to a secluded lake, a narrative carefully constructed to distance him from Willow Creek at the critical time. Yet a fleeting flicker in his eyes, a coldness beneath the veneer, hinted at a less innocent truth. The detectives, watchful and patient, offered no direct challenges, simply absorbing his narrative. But even as Art meticulously spun his tale, the accumulating physical evidence was quietly, systematically dismantling his carefully constructed world. A breakthrough arrived through the keen observation of a patrol officer. Responding to a routine report of illegal dumping, the officer discovered a pair of mud-caked hiking boots discarded in a dumpster behind a gas station frequented by Art. The boots, a distinctive, uncommon brand, were more than just a coincidence. Forensic analysis quickly confirmed their unique tread pattern was an exact match for the print found near Eleanor's back patio door, a silent, damning link. These were not simply old shoes. They were the discarded proof of Eleanor's last visitor, jettisoned in a desperate, albeit clumsy attempt to erase a critical piece of the crime scene. As the physical evidence solidified, an anonymous tip yielded an unexpected, profoundly significant development. Buster, Eleanor's loyal golden retriever, was found wandering disoriented along a remote rural road mere miles from Art's secluded cabin. The dog, visibly shaken and hungry, was alive, but his presence there defied logic. Buster, a creature of habit, would never have ventured so far from home on his own, especially not into such an isolated area. He became a living, breathing piece of evidence, a silent passenger on a journey he should never have taken, placing him firmly within the orbit of Art's known movements and directly undermining Art's carefully fabricated alibi. These disparate pieces of the puzzle, the distinctive boot print, the unsettling GPS ping of Eleanor's phone near Art's cabin, and now Buster's bewildering appearance in the same vicinity, began to weave an unyielding net around Arthur Jenkins. Each discovery meticulously peeled back another layer of his carefully built deception, transforming the initial informal chat into the inevitable precursor for a far more confrontational reckoning. The illusion of Willow Creek's peace, so recently shattered now, gave way to the grim realization that the individual they hunted had been living among them, hidden in plain sight. His carefully guarded secrets were now, piece by painful piece, being dragged into the harsh light of undeniable evidence. Arthur Jenkins was ushered into the stark confines of the interrogation room. The sterile quiet, a stark counterpoint to the easy charm he typically projected. Detective Sergeant Laura Hedges, her demeanor calm, and her gaze unwavering, initiated the conversation with a measured, non-threatening cadence. "Art," she began, her voice level, "we need to understand what happened to Eleanor. We know you two had history, that you cared for her. It was a deliberate maneuver, an opening designed to cultivate a fragile sense of trust, inviting Art to speak without immediate perceived pressure. Initially, Art exuded a practiced confidence, settling back in his chair with an almost dismissive air. He reiterated his alibi, a story of a solitary drive and a late-night fishing trip, his answers vague, his memory selectively clouded regarding any recent interactions with Eleanor. He projected a persona of weary cooperation, subtly attempting to deflect the conversation away from her disappearance and towards the notion of their complicated past being a closed, tragic chapter. The subtle dance of a psychological confrontation was underway. Detective Mark Jensen, until then a silent observer, slid a forensic photograph across the table. It was a meticulously detailed image of the distinctive mud-caked hiking boot print found near Eleanor's back patio door. Art's carefully maintained composure began to visibly unravel. His eyes, which moments before had held steady, darted briefly to the incriminating image, then flitted nervously around the room as if searching for an escape hatch. His posture stiffened perceptibly. His previously smooth responses fragmented, punctuated by a strained, almost dismissive chuckle, followed by increasingly aggressive denials. "I don't know anything about that boot," he insisted, his voice hardening a thin veneer of indignation, barely concealing his rising panic. "That's not mine." Hedges, keenly attuned to his every micro-expression, allowed a heavy silence to settle. Then she leaned slightly forward, her voice dropping a fraction. "Art, we also have information that Eleanor's phone, the one that vanished with her, briefly pinged a tower near your remote cabin just hours after she disappeared." The statement landed like a hammer blow, directly dismantling his painstakingly constructed narrative. The color visibly drained from Art's face. His feigned calm shattered, giving way to a frantic stammer. His earlier confidence evaporated, replaced by raw agitation. A desperate need to explain, to justify, contorted his features as he launched into a convoluted new narrative. He now claimed he had been having a secret, late-night rendezvous with Eleanor, a clandestine affair he swore he'd kept hidden to protect them both. This illicit encounter, he argued, was the only plausible reason her phone might have been near his cabin. Perhaps she'd left it, or he'd inadvertently picked it up. The detectives exchanged an almost imperceptible glance. This elaborate tale was a textbook maneuver of a deceptive suspect, a brazen attempt to sow doubt and muddy the investigative waters with a sensationalized fiction. The truth, they knew with absolute certainty, lay far deeper than any fabricated secret affair. This wasn't about romance. It was about desperation, the corrosive grip of greed, and a vibrant life tragically extinguished. The interrogation had moved beyond polite questioning. Arthur Jenkins was now fighting for his freedom, and every unraveling thread of his story was tightening the noose around him. The recycled air of the interrogation room grew heavy with the stale scent of Arthur Jenkins' collapsing narrative. He still clung to his fabricated tale of a secret rendezvous, a desperate gambit to rationalize the phone ping and the incriminating boot print. Detective Hedges, however, had long since recognized the hairline fractures in his carefully crafted defiance. "Art," she stated, her voice steady and devoid of judgment, "your story has run its course. We know Eleanor. We know her life, and we know your desperation. It was not a plea, but a definitive declaration of their unshakable certainty." With deliberate precision, Detective Jensen slid a small tarnished silver locket across the sterile table. It came to rest between them, an innocent object burdened with unspeakable truth, its surface faintly marred by a dark, dried reddish-brown stain. Art's gaze, which had previously darted with restless evasion, now locked onto the locket. A profound tremor seized him, starting in his hands and visibly shaking his entire frame. The piece was instantly, devastatingly recognizable, a cherished heirloom from Eleanor's grandmother, a sentimental token she had worn almost religiously. Sarah Vance, Eleanor's sister, had confirmed its significance with a choked sob, just hours earlier. Forensic analysis had swiftly, unequivocally identified Eleanor's DNA on the locket, and the minuscule yet damning trace of blood also belonged to her, amplifying the horror of its discovery into an undeniable scream. Confronted with this irrefutable proof, Art's meticulously constructed composure did not merely falter, it spectacularly imploded. The last vestiges of his bravado evaporated, replaced by a raw, primal terror that twisted his features into a mask of absolute despair, like a cornered animal. He slumped forward in his chair, his shoulders collapsing, his gaze fixed on the locket, as if it possessed a venomous hypnotic power. A chilling silence descended upon the room, broken only by the ragged, desperate sound of Art's breathing. "It was an accident," he finally rasped, his voice a strained, barely audible whisper. He began to recount a fractured version of events, an argument over the inherited land money, a desperate financial plea escalating into a furious shouting match. Eleanor, he claimed, had lashed out, and in the ensuing physical altercation, a shove, a fall. He described the sickening thud, the sudden horrifying stillness that followed, and the immediate overwhelming panic that had consumed him. He swore he hadn't meant for it to happen, but then, paralyzed by fear and the irreversible deed he admitted to disposing of her body in a remote wooded area known only to him, a desperate, futile attempt to bury his tracks and erase the unspeakable horror. The 3 calls, no answer, once simply David Miller's growing concern, and the spark of a baffling mystery, now bore a profoundly crushing significance. They were no longer just a sequence of missed connections. They were the definitive, chilling marker of a vibrant life, abruptly extinguished, the precise timestamp of the moment Eleanor Vance's world went silent, consumed by the corrosive forces of greed and uncontrollable rage. The truth, ugly and brutal in its final revelation, had at last been unearthed, shattering every illusion surrounding her disappearance and confirming the darkest fears of all who loved her. The confession, however, reluctant and self-serving, sealed Art Jenkins' fate. He was formally charged with the murder of Eleanor Vance. The news ripped through the quiet community of Willow Creek like a seismic shockwave, obliterating the carefully cultivated illusion of suburban safety. Whispers of curiosity transformed into exclamations of horror, then into a collective surge of outrage as residents grappled with the grim reality a monster had indeed been living among them, a charming predator lurking behind a disturbingly familiar facade. The bedrock of security, once a defining feature of Willow Creek, had crumbled. The omniscient narrator traces the swift, inexorable march of the legal process. A grand jury presented with the overwhelming forensic evidence, Art's contradictory statements, and his chilling partial admission swiftly returned an indictment for first-degree murder. The community, still reeling from the profound shock, galvanized around a unified demand for justice, for answers for Eleanor. Forensic teams, guided by Art's grudging, almost whispered directions, descended upon the remote wooded area he had indicated. The discovery of Eleanor's remains brought a bittersweet, agonizing semblance of closure to Sarah and David. A profound relief and easing of the torturous uncertainty washed over them, yet it was inextricably intertwined with the crushing confirmation of their darkest, most terrifying fears. In the immediate aftermath of the charges, the Willow Creek Police Department issued a meticulously worded statement. It acknowledged Art's arrest while carefully upholding the legal presumption of his innocence. Yet, to those who had followed the unfolding nightmare, the mountain of evidence against him was overwhelmingly damning. Sarah Vance, Eleanor's sister, now transformed into a central figure for a family consumed by grief, spoke with a quiet, fierce determination. Her raw pain was palpable, a visible wound, yet it was tempered by an unyielding resolve to see justice done. She described the agonizing wait for the trial, a brutal period where each day stretched into an eternity. "You can't be strong through something like that," she confessed, her voice thick with emotion. "It just rips you to pieces." But Eleanor deserves justice. She deserves everything. It was a profound internal struggle she revealed between the consuming weight of her personal grief and a burning, singular desire for accountability for her beloved sister. Eleanor Vance's life, so vibrantly portrayed at the beginning of this narrative, her spirited energy, her professional achievements, her hopeful dreams, now ascended to center stage in a new, more somber light. She was no longer merely a missing person. She was the victim whose memory galvanized an entire community. Candlelight vigils sprang up, photographs of her smiling face adorned local businesses, and a collective mourning settled over Willow Creek. The community rallied, transforming their shared grief into a potent force, a unified demand that justice's long, unyielding arm reach out and grasp the perpetrator of this unthinkable crime. The slow, deliberate path to the courtroom had begun, and a world held its breath, awaiting the final act of this suburban tragedy. The trial of Arthur Jenkins transformed the normally placid Willow Creek courthouse into a crucible of profound emotion and unyielding legal strategy. Every seat in the gallery was claimed local residents, packing the courtroom, their faces a tapestry of morbid curiosity and profound sorrow, unified by a demand to witness justice unfold. District Attorney Eleanor Rossi, a prosecutor renowned for her calm demeanor and devastating precision, meticulously led the state's case. She wove an irrefutable tapestry of evidence, connecting seemingly disparate threads into a singular, damning narrative. The 3 calls, no answer served as a chilling timeline marker, starkly highlighting Eleanor's isolation at the precise moment of her disappearance. Forensic experts detailed the matching boot prints found both at Eleanor's home and in the dumpster. Digital forensic specialists outlined the unsettling ping of Eleanor's phone near Art's remote cabin. Finally, the blood-stained locket, Eleanor's cherished heirloom, was presented as tangible, agonizing proof, each piece of evidence a crushing blow to Art's continually shifting alibis. David Miller, Eleanor's heartbroken boyfriend, took the stand, his voice thick with suppressed grief, yet steady as he recounted their last mundane conversation, the mounting alarm that had propelled him to her door, and the chilling, empty scene he discovered. Through his testimony, a poignant portrait of Eleanor's vibrant life emerged, emphasizing the unbearable void left by her sudden, brutal absence. Next, Sarah Vance, Eleanor's sister, her face etched with sorrow, stepped forward, her gaze unwavering. She spoke of Eleanor's boundless dreams, her unwavering strength, and the deepening fear she'd expressed regarding Art's possessive nature and escalating financial desperation. Her words etched Eleanor not merely as a victim, but as a beloved sister, a loyal friend, a woman whose future had been cruelly snatched away. The raw, visceral emotion of their testimonies rippled through the courtroom, making Eleanor's profound absence keenly, almost physically felt. Finally, Arthur Jenkins, the deceptive suspect, made his calculated entrance to the witness stand in his own defense. It was a final, desperate performance, a high-stakes gamble to sway the jury. clung to his revised story of accidental death, attempting to garner sympathy, his voice tinged with a feigned remorse that felt hollow, almost rehearsed. He spoke of a heated argument over the disputed land, of Eleanor's supposed aggression, of a tragic fall he insisted he never intended. Under direct examination, he projected an image of a regretful man burdened by an unfortunate mistake. However, under the relentless surgical cross-examination of the district attorney, Rossi, his carefully constructed demeanor began to visibly fracture. Calm, practiced regret dissolved into agitated defensiveness. His answers became clipped, evasive, punctuated by frustrated outbursts. The more Rossi pressed, the more Art's underlying manipulation and volatile temperament were laid bare, peeling away the last layers of his elaborate facade. He wasn't merely attempting to explain away a tragedy. He was desperately striving to control the narrative, to deflect all blame, to save himself from the inescapable truth. The omniscient narrator frames these powerful testimonies and the suspect's unraveling performance, inviting the jury and the audience to weigh not just the stark evidence, but the intricate, deceptive dance playing out before them. Was this a man truly remorseful for a tragic accident, or merely regretful of being caught? The profound, undeniable weight of Eleanor's memory pressed down upon the courtroom, demanding an unequivocal answer, a final reckoning that would either condemn or absolve. The fate of Arthur Jenkins and the true cost of Eleanor Vance's vanished life now rested squarely in the hands of 12 strangers. After 3 arduous days of deliberation, the jury returned the air in the packed Willow Creek courtroom, thick with an almost unbearable anticipation. Every eye wide, with a shared blend of anxiety and hope fixed on the foreman as the verdict form was presented to the clerk. The words, when they finally came guilty of the murder of Eleanor Vance, unleashed a tumultuous wave of conflicting emotions through the gallery. A collective, indrawn breath followed by a unified, shuddering exhale of profound relief mingled with hushed sobs of sorrow. Arthur Jenkins, the architect of Eleanor's shattered world, was convicted. The omniscient narrator articulates the swift, unyielding finality of the legal system. The sentencing phase, though a procedural formality after a guilty verdict, was anything but devoid of emotion. In the somber chamber, Sarah Vance, Eleanor's grieving sister, stepped forward, her presence a potent force, her voice trembling with the immeasurable weight of her loss, resonated with an unwavering strength that commanded the room's full attention. She fixed her gaze directly on Arthur Jenkins. Her red-rimmed eyes, resolute and burning, bore into his impassive face. Arthur Jenkins, she began her words, a direct, unflinching arrow of accusation. You did not merely take Eleanor from us. You stole our peace. You ripped a gaping hole in the very fabric of this community. And for that, you must never be allowed to walk the earth as a free person. Her voice broke a raw, pained cry, but her gaze remained unwavering, a powerful testament to the enduring love and incandescent rage that fueled her. Arthur Jenkins, however, sat unmoving, a mask of cold defiance etched upon his features, betraying no remorse, only a chilling, unrepentant stillness. The judge, his voice heavy with the gravity of his judicial duty, then delivered the sentence: life imprisonment, ensuring Arthur Jenkins would never again pose a threat. It was a definitive measure of justice, a stark final period at the end of a horrific narrative. For David Miller and Sarah, the verdict brought a profound, if bittersweet, sense of vindication. The relentless pursuit of truth had prevailed, Eleanor's killer would be held accountable. Yet the wound, deep and agonizing, remained an open chasm. Eleanor Vance's suburban home, once a vibrant embodiment of her flourishing life and meticulous dreams, stood vacant in Willow Creek. Its manicured lawn still green, its windows mirroring the ceaseless cycle of seasons, it transformed into a silent, poignant monument to a life unjustly extinguished. The haunting refrain of 3 calls, no answer would forever be indelibly etched into the collective memory of Willow Creek, a chilling reminder of how swiftly tranquility can shatter and how easily malevolence can fester beneath a veneer of suburban normalcy. While justice had indeed been served, the pervasive ache of Eleanor's absence would forever linger, an indelible scar on the community she cherished, and most acutely on the hearts of her family. They had found their answers. They had secured their justice. But the vibrant woman they cherished was gone, her memory, a poignant echo in the quiet, once perfect streets of a town, forever altered by its suburban house mystery. Justice illuminated the darkness, but the echoes of 3 unanswered calls would forever remind Willow Creek of the enduring cost beneath its shattered peace. If the lingering mystery of those unanswered calls and the tireless pursuit of justice in quiet communities resonates with you, subscribe to Shadow Files for more true crime explorations. Don't forget to subscribe to Shadow Files and hit the notification bell.